or everything? Just cover food.
We also like to ask about the attitudes of the staff towards food recycling, and what is the knowledge of what is the level of knowledge that our students know about the different methods of.
Okay. I don't really know very much about food recycling, but go ahead.
Okay.
What is your view about the importance of food recycling?
What do you mean by food recycling? What does it involve?
Like after we eat the food, like
Yeah.
do you feel that there's an importance of like recycling, or do you feel it's too inconvenient?
Are you talking about the packaging or the food itself?
The food itself.
The food itself, after I've eaten it?
Yeah.
After I've eaten it.
So usually you'll finish all your food and then you won't have
Right, okay,
any
so
food
yeah.
remaining.
I normally finish all my meals.
Yeah, so what is your view what do you think of people, the importance of food recycling, as in like how important is food recycling when food wastage is on the rise?
Okay, I disagree with food wastage. I think the reasons for it are varied. Either people take too much food and don't know how much they can eat, or they're not aware of the problem and they don't see it as an issue. In terms of food recycling, I'm still not entirely sure what you mean by it. I mean, do you
As in
mean
like when you finish your food, or when you're like very full but you're forced to eat, and then you couldn't finish much of it, so are you gonna recycle it, or are you gonna throw it
how do
away?
you recycle it?
Like maybe you put it use it as fertilizer or something like that.
Okay, so it would go into sort of a compost pile.
Yeah, something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a very good idea. I'm all for it. However, I think in an urban area like this, where very few people have outdoor space that is their own, it's gonna almost be a bit of a waste of time, because you're not gonna get whatever compost you make to an area where you can grow food or gardens or flowers or whatever. It's not gonna. I don't think it will be as effective in Singapore as it would be in places with more open space.
What kind of practices in RI show that students are well educated about food recycling?
What kind of practices?
Yeah. Like, do you see any food recycling project?
No.
So
I haven't seen anything.
we can conclude that actually our students do not know much about food recycling.
I think you'd have to interview some, maybe take a sample of the student population to find out that for sure, but in terms of are there any practices that take place, I don't think so. If you look at the bins by the canteen, it looks like if you have any wastage, you scrape it into the bin and then put the plates in there.
So there's not much food recycling going on about the school.
Not that I'm aware of, no. I don't know what happens to the food once it's been thrown, but I take it it's mixed in with all the other rubbish as well. It's not just food wastage, it's cartons, drinks bottles, packaging as well, so you wouldn't be able to compost that anyway because half of it isn't recyclable.
How will you describe the general attitude of the teachers towards recycling food?
Recycling food. Again, I don't think it's much of an issue. Most of my colleagues in there, when I've eaten with them, always finish their food. I don't think food wastage is much of an issue.
For example, like after meetings, you will normally have some food, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do the teachers handle the leftover food?
The leftover food. Quite often try and give it to the students, pass it up to them. Other than that, I think the rest would just be thrown away, depending on what it is. If it's rice, sort of meal kind of things, opposed to snacks, it would probably just be thrown away.
So if it's packaged bread, you'll be handed out to the students?
Yeah, packaged bread or sweet things, cakes.
Yeah, but what about, do they actually package it and bring it home, like if there's a buffet?
Some might, some might take some home with them. Depends on lots of different things.
Depends on the teacher.
Yeah, it depends on the food
herself.
itself. Yeah.
We have observed the teachers usually eat together during breaks. We understand that you often have lunch breaks with your colleagues as well.
Mm-hmm.
What are your observations about the way our teachers handle leftovers during this break?
What my observations, well, there's not a lot of leftover food to handle. Any small bits that they might have left over are thrown away, usually, or sometimes they'll buy a big, I don't know, tray of curry puffs or small snacks that they'll leave in the pantry for everyone to come and help themselves to, and that usually all goes. So, I mean, there's not really much of an issue with leftover food here.
So what is your evaluation of art students' background feeling from the standpoint of how they handle leftover food during breaks? So do you think their background will affect
Background in terms of finances or
family
family?
background?
This is a big generalisation, but I assume those who might not have a strong financial background are more likely to finish everything they have. If their family is unable to afford, more than enough food, they might value food slightly more than those who might be slightly wealthier. But having said that, every family is different, and depending on what values they're brought up with, I mean, they might value food just as much as someone who can't always afford a good meal.
Actually, I would like to ask something about question 4. Like during lunch breaks, right? You said they order like curry, pan of curry puffs, and then they place in the pantry. So what happens to the leftover curry puffs if there are any? Have you observed any sort of something like that?
Okay, on a few occasions that this happened, I think I've never seen one left over. I assume if it was left over, someone would just take it home. If it's that kind of thing, they take it home. If it's like a lunch that's been prepared with rice, different veg, and chicken, then that is usually dealt with by the caterers who provide it.
Oh, okay, so you won't know what happens to the food.
No.
But if there are some remaining food, some teachers might just take a plastic bag, pack it home, and okay.
What are your opinions of the level of knowledge our students have on food recycling?
About food?
The level of knowledge that you think that our students have on food recycling?
Food recycling? Probably pretty low. I don't think they're going to know much about where food wastage goes and what can be done with it, unless they've read up on it. I don't imagine it's something that takes place in their homes very much. I don't think our students have low knowledge of food recycling. I wouldn't say no knowledge, but I would say little knowledge. Lower amount. Just from, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's just my instinct.
So, based on your during class, when you are mentioning about food wastage, during geography lessons, based on their responses due to food wastage, you think they have actually low knowledge on food recycling? Is that what you're trying to say?
The food wastage we talk about in class generally relates to when you have a big commercial farmer or a big buyer of rice or wheat. It then goes into the storage and it's not distributed properly, and then it starts to rot, and then you don't get food going to people who need it most. That's food wastage in the term that I normally refer to in class. Food recycling, with what you're talking about, is on a bit of a smaller scale. It's once you have the food, you've bought the meal, you don't finish the meal, and then you have the leftover food, and you're wasting it in that sense. I believe they're aware of the issue, but I don't think that they know exactly what is involved with recycling that food or what they could do with that food instead of just throwing it away.
So since they do not know what to do, we are right to infer that they have low knowledge on food recycling, or even no knowledge. Or maybe they're just lazy to do so.
Possibly. It could come down to laziness. I don't want to say they have no knowledge. I think, if you ask them about it, they might be like, oh, well, we could compost it or we could do this, but I don't think they would actively do it without a push.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think it's important for our students to have adequate knowledge on food recycling?
I think it would be a good idea. If you think enough food is wasted on a daily basis to make it worthwhile to start recycling the leftovers, then yeah, I think raising awareness of the issues could be effective.
So if our students have adequate knowledge on food recycling, it will actually help to reduce food wastage in some sense in RI.
Yes. I don't think it's just knowledge about food wastage, food recycling though. I think you need to make them aware of the issues surrounding food wastage and the ethics of it, and how, there are so many people without adequate food, yet you have enough and you're wasting it. I think there are two parts to it. It's not just about how to recycle food, it's about not wasting it in the first place.
What do you suggest can be done to increase the culture of food recycling in RI?
You can make ad campaigns. You could get either the geography teachers or the form teachers, maybe in PIT, to raise awareness of it. It could be a campaign that the prefects might want to encourage, like they did with the Clean Up Your Classrooms. If you waste food, stick it in a certain bin, and then science students might experiment with what they can do with that wastage food. Maybe turn it into some sort of fertilizer the soils if that's possible. So an ad campaign, classroom time, making the students aware of the issues.
So raising awareness will actually help this case, if you think so.
Yeah.
So what about practical ways, such as adding food recycling bins to help the process?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, yeah.
So how would it actually help up to speed up the process? As in, is it because it's a more practical way, and then people know that there's a food recycling bin, like our recycling bins in the Raja block, and so they will actually start recycling? Would it help in that way?
I think so. If you make it very big and obvious that this bin was only for food wastage, not packaging, I think it would help.
Do you feel that there's a need to incorporate food recycling education into the current school curriculum?
I don't think it would be a particularly big topic, but it could be incorporated into geography of food, just to make students more aware of the issue. I don't think there's a need to spend a great deal of time on it because the message is fairly simple and the reasons for it are also simple, but it could be incorporated into the syllabus. Whether it needs to be or not, if you establish that it's a big enough problem, then yes. But from what I've seen, or my interpretation of the issue is not that many people waste a lot of food here. Singaporeans and their food,
But it's true that they do not waste food here, but outside they may do, like during buffets or what, they may do. So, food wastage is, I've repeated it, it's on the rise.
Mm-hmm.
So, wouldn't this be quite an important thing to do, as to help them, we can use a lesson or two to actually help them know more about food recycling, so they actually will help to reduce, not only in RI if there even is, but also in the whole of Singapore on a basis like that.
Case. If there are any food recycling centres in Singapore or places to go and do that, I think that would be a good field trip. Possibly sometime in class could be spent on it as well.
Mm-hmm. So you feel that there is a little bit of need to actually incorporate food recycling into our school curriculum?
If it's been established that it is a real issue, yes.
It's a big issue, but...
Yeah.
So, what do you actually mean by big issue?
Well, before I did this interview, at a previous one with another group who was on food wastage, I wasn't aware that it was a huge problem within RI. But that's partly because I don't really eat the canteen, I don't see the amount of food wasted on a daily basis. But from what they've told me and some of what you've told me, it's becoming a big issue. But within RI, I don't know if it's the biggest issue to be concerned with in terms of food. Possibly outside the boundaries of RI, yes. But yeah. That answers your question.
Yeah, so basically that's it, and you guys have any more questions? Yeah, thank you, Ms. Chalmers.
Thank you, Ms. Chalmers.
It's just in time as well for training. One thing I suggest next time you do an interview is maybe send your interviewee the questions beforehand, just so they can prepare and think about some of the answers, so you might get a better response. And define some of your terms. What does food recycling actually mean? Okay, food